If you enjoy watching Common Ground online, please consider making a tax-deductible contribution at lptv.org. Common Ground is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
Hi, I'm Rachel Johnson, and thanks for joining us on Common Ground. On tonight's episode, Ray Boessel Jr. of Bigfork follows in its grandfather-in-law's footsteps, creating handmade birchbark canoes. Boessel's late grandfather-in-law, Bill Hafeman, gained worldwide recognition when he was featured on CBS On the Road with Charles Kuralt in 1982. And Brainerd artist and educator Evelyn Matthies has spent her career teaching others about all facets of art. She shows us that spontaneity and pushing the boundaries are the keys to creating a masterpiece.
My name is Evelyn Matthies. Art came by me naturally. I've always been very visual. To actually get started in art, it happened when I was in college. I would take an art course to offset the psychology course I had to have, or I'd take an art course to offset the higher math, and lo and behold, I ended up with an art minor without even knowing it. And then I went on to get my master's in art. I had a very nice childhood. My mother was a school teacher, which was kind of unheard of. She got her college degree in 1931, I think it was. So, and my dad was not educated. He ended up being a contractor after we sold the farm, but he only went through 8th grade. So how they got together, I will never know, but it was a very happy marriage. I married my high school sweetheart. He went in the service, and I went to college so that we could get married when he got out. And then, that was at Mankato. I got my teaching provisional degree in 2 years because I took extra credits. So I started teaching when I was 19. Married Bill when he got out of the military. Moved up here in '59. I taught at the high school, and Bill was a coach and a math teacher at Franklin Junior High, this building, in fact. And we were going to stay for 3 years, but we got going with the scuba diving business, and we bought lots of property, and lo and behold, what is it? Many, many years later, we're still here. We've got 3 kids. They're all married, they all have kids. Good life. I have 1 great-grandson. I had over 8,000 students at the college, by the way, and I used to tell them, oh boy, you get in art and you have natural highs. You don't have to work at being happy, you're just gonna be happy. When I first started, I was very conscious of what others thought, and after about the first 5 years, I decided, oh, I don't care what they think. If I'm enjoying it, that's the important part. So I went on to do things that made me happy. When we bought this building in 1990, we decided the architecture was so weird because it's poured concrete. So we would have to do something with the interior that would fit in with the idea of poured concrete. And the first idea was to do this for a floor, you know, as you come in the front door. Well, I started working on it in 1991 or 92 and worked on it for quite a while. I was sensible. It's put together with 2-foot squares because I knew if I had to exhibit it somewhere, the only way I could move it would be as if they were small pieces. So it was movable at one time. It isn't anymore. It took a whole lot of work to get it up on the wall. Finally, I had a couple students that were doing kind of like an internship. So I let them work around the outer edges. The theme, of course, are the dolphins and the scuba diver. I have done small mosaics in the past, but never anything this big. I'm glad I did it. Overall, it turned out fine. And it is 8 feet by 6 feet, and it has 6,950 or something of those little tile. This is one I use for young children. It's hands-on. These fish I sewed, stuffed them, put Velcro on them, and the kids can come in and rearrange it any way they want. This is called recycling, by the way. This is styrofoam. This is a badminton net that I had laying around the house. I was given a bush grant, and I went on a 1/4 sabbatical. They gave me money to study the Mississippi from the headwaters down to Little Falls. And at the time, I was a private pilot, so I would fly the plane to these different destinations, often to Bemidji, leave it parked there, rent a car, and go out. But I have a series of 18 of the Mississippi River. This one is done as an impressionistic painting, and it's down in Little Falls area. It's just the rocks. It's actually one of the last ones of the series. The inspiration for the next one with the Negroes, we did a program in Brainerd called Differing Visions, and photographers and artists and poets and musicians all got together and came up with this presentation. It's a long time ago. The black and white photo is part of the study I did of New York City when we were out there for the gates. Our daughter is the one on the left with the black coat on. That's the carousel, the old carousel, and we rode it. Such fun. I love carousels. That photograph is important to me. I did a whole series. I've got, I think, 30 photos that are framed. This is an abstract of a painting that you'll be looking at next. I teach everybody how to take a realistic interpretation, simplify it, and make it into abstract design, and this is one of them. I know it's just an abstract composition that you've just looked at. This is the realistic one. And the students thoroughly enjoyed sketching birds in this zoo. It's a beautiful zoo. Oh, here's the painting I was looking for. There are 97 fish in that. And the only ones that have actually found them are little kids. Like I had a 9-year-old that sat, I don't know how long, and he just said, yeah, I can find them. I can find them all. Most adults get bored after finding about 30. But it's fun. It's challenging. I did a series of European paintings after I'd taken students to England on a study tour. And I've actually been to Stonehenge 7 times, and every time the sky is just wild. Traveling in Europe for 9 years, taking students, I have been exposed to so many different types of art, and they all come back and say, oh, I don't want to just paint. Let's try something new and different or unusual. And I think that's the true artist creativity in you. It was a good experience, and that's one of the things that art allows you to do. You can organize in such a way that everybody enjoys it, because whether you're teaching them, we did a lot of black and whites too. Whether you are doing just the black and white or you're teaching them the color theory, it's always a learning process. And because it's visual, most people enjoy it. Many of my former students have come back, and it's exactly what has happened to them. They get this happy feeling when they do art. And I think part of it comes from sharing with other people. I don't know what I'm going to do till I start. I don't have anything in mind. So we'll just go for broke. I just love to paint. It's so relaxing for me. I don't know how people cannot enjoy painting, but sometimes they don't. I'll show you wet on wet. That's kind of spontaneous. What you do, you have to wet your paper first. And normally I just run it under the faucet, but it's too hard to get over there right now. I think I'm going to work with an unlimited palette, which means I have the prerogative to do anything I want. And one thing you learn as an artist, you have to repeat colors or your continuity and the balance is just not good. So if I put it down one place, I'm going to probably put it down 2 other places too. I like to work with color theory, and if there's green, I like to have red next to it because they're opposites. If they flow together, they turn into mud, however, so you have to be a little concerned about where you're putting it. As you can see, I'm just adding color. I like to add color, see what it makes me think of, and then go from there. That's why I hated sketching always. I'm just going to be playing, and I'm organizing color basically. And the colors make me think of flowers. What I'm doing is putting down value changes and intensity changes. Now, value change means light and dark. Intensity means bright and dull. And you can see some of these areas are much brighter than others. I love color, as you can see if you look around the room. I am mixing the oranges and the reds and the yellows. I think I'll put a dark center in that one. You're probably thinking, so is she doing 1 flower, 10 flowers, or 3 flowers? I don't know yet. It all depends on how I feel. Now, it's more fun if you create as you go. Your interpretation in watercolor, the very best is spontaneity. You know, react to what you see. But I think the fun part of art is you can organize in such a way that you are going to imprint an image on someone's mind and they won't forget it. The impact that art has had on my life is something that is really close to my heart because I have found joy, I have found contentment, I have found excitement, I have found challenges. I'm the type that always says you have to push boundaries, and in art you can do that.
We're at the Blackduck Woodcarvers Festival that is held the last Saturday in July every year, and it's a fantastic event.
We've had 29 years of wood carving shows. The visitors can expect to see carvings of all kinds.
I'm just amazed at how talented some people are and how beautiful their work is up here. This is an unbelievable show that people shouldn't miss.
My name is Ray Boessel Jr. and I'm from Bigfork, Minnesota. And I built Birchbark canoes, which I was taught by my wife, Christy, and I then worked 3 years for her grandfather who started a business back in the 1920s. The canoe business has been here a long time, the canoes have been here even longer. Well, originally it wasn't really a business. Her grandfather built canoes. He made some money at it, but back in the like 1920s and 30s, they were only getting like $1 a day working in the gravel pits. And so he needed some extra money when he quit the gravel pits, so he was building a canoe and a guy bought it, so he kept building them. Bill Hafeman was my wife's grandfather, and he was famous for building canoes for many years. He made them for the state of Minnesota, for museums and stuff. And through all this time, there's been different people came through and they would write up articles about him. Well, eventually a guy named Charles Kuralt, which most people know from CBS, he heard about Bill and building the canoes. And he looked all over, and so he finally found Bill, he found out where he was at. And he came, I think it was 1981 or 82. But they were here for a week, and they filmed Bill, and they did all the camera stuff with that. And then Charles Kuralt came on Friday. He came in, and I thought he was a game warden. He came in wearing just all khaki clothes. I thought we were in trouble with the game warden or something, you know. He comes in, and he introduces himself to Bill and everything. And he sat down, and he sat by the riverbank with Bill, and they talked about stuff. And Bill told him how it was back here in the old days. But they sat and talked. He came in the house and he had dinner with Bill and Violet, and I got to eat with him too, and the camera crew and stuff. But he was just a real friend of the guys. It was just like a neighbor down the street just walked in and said hi, you know, started talking. It wasn't like he was a famous person or anything. I mean, he was real common about everything. So it was kind of nice meeting him. Well, this here is my building table. This is where I build the canoes. And this is my wife's grandfather's. It was Bill Hafeman's before I ever used it. He had this table before I was here, and it might be as old as I am. So it's a lot of the tools I use, the jigs here, and a lot of clamps, and the tools that I use are all tools that were my wife's grandfather's. The canoe I lay out on this table here, and you see there's cracks in the boards here, and that lines up with a sew seam that's on the side of the canoe. It's all sewed with roots from a black spruce tree. There's no nails or glue in the whole canoe. So I lay the bark out flat. I sew what we call a blanket first, which is 15 pieces sewn together. There's 3 bottom pieces, and there are 6 side pieces on each side. They get sewed together in the blanket. Then I make the end by sewing 2 pieces together flat on these small platforms I have down here by the wall. And they have a crack between the boards, same as this, so I can sew them 2 pieces together. I fold those pieces in half, and I bend bow stems on these jigs here. This here would be for a Chippewa or a Ojibwe longnose. This one down here is for a taste of bulls or Melicite tribe style. Either one I can make with this shape of bow stem. And this one down here is the Algonquin Old Style. And so I make different tribal styles of canoes by depending on what shape I bend the bow stem. But then that bow stem just gets sewed inside the canoe, inside the end, and shapes the end. After the ends are made and the blanket is sewn, I have this frame you can see here that's shaped like the bottom of a canoe. So that just shapes the bottom. The form in there, I brace it so it stays centered on the canoe so it doesn't move around. I keep that braced down. I fold the sides up using these jigs here on the side. And there's 7 of these jigs on each side of the canoe. There's here, here, and all the way down on both sides. And those give me the depth of my canoe. And I also place them so I get the width of the canoe. So they're 36 inches wide basically in the center, and they taper down to the ends. After that, I clamp the gunwales on the top. And that's a long wooden rail on the top of the canoe. In the old days, I used to mount guns on the top of the boats, like the ships, sailing ships, and also on the big canoes, the North Canoe and the Montreal Canoe. And so top wall of boat or ship, we just called the gun wall, which got slid around the gunwale or gunnel. And that's what these are, is the top wall of the ship then, or top wall of the canoe. After the gunwales are clamped on, I do the root bindings here. And these root bindings, there's about 70 of those, and they hold the gunwales tight together so that the ribs don't pop through. Okay, well this here is a spruce root, and this is what holds the whole canoe together. They're sewn together with these roots. It takes about 500 feet of root to do a canoe this size here. What I do, I've got 3 holes here underneath the gunwale. So I just start in the first hole, I pull the root through, I take the wide end, I stick that in between the gunwales. I push that down in there. I go through each hole about 3 or 4 times, try and make the bindings about the same width of binding. You think about it, the natives never had all these tools when they made the canoes, even like on all like this. All they had would be like a deer antler, which they would grind on a stone to make corners if they wanted to use it for drilling, or they would leave it round if they wanted to use it just for enlarging the hole like this here, which I'm doing right there. You just go through each one of these holes until you get the width of the binding that you need it to be. The roots aren't always straight. Up and down here it's got kinks, but you just sew them in there and you work with it. You get the bindings as tight as you can get them. Now when the ribs go in, there's a groove on the inside gunwale that I make when I make the gunwales. And the ribs are just hammered in. When the ribs get hammered in between the gunwales, that tightens the roots up a little bit more even. Now I'm on the last hole, and that's why I'm going to make that binding. So I do now, I come back to the middle hole. I go back to the first hole to the inside. And just cut it off. So it just makes a little S-lock underneath the gunwales, and the root dries in place and it holds. There's no fancy knots or anything to it. Every other binding, I think there's one here, is a peg. We peg every other one. And the natives used to use like thorns from a thorn apple tree. And that would hold it so the inside gunwale doesn't push up when you put the ribs in. But after the bindings are all done, they'll knock all this woodwork that's framing it, that'll all come out. And I'll line it lengthways with cedar lining, which I have some over here. This goes lengthways inside of the canoe. You see from the cedar log here, the outside layers are lighter. That's the sapwood. That's what I make into the lining. The heartwood is darker, which is drier and stiffer, and I make that into the ribs for the canoe. So I get the ribs from the inside of the tree and the lining from the outside of the tree. I get both out of one piece of wood then. These are the tools I use here. This here is a froe, like to use for making shingles. And I just beat that in with my maul. So that's what I use for starting the split. When it's heavier like this, I need something with a handle, which gives me leverage for breaking it apart. But then after it gets down, then I just use a butcher knife like this here, and you start the split and you crack it apart. First, I'm going to be taking the bark off, and this is fresh, and it works better when it's fresh. And that's just a wooden wedge that I use here. You see that's all wet inside, that's the sap on it yet. But first I got to get the the width of the ribs. I'll take the hammer and a wooden wedge. I have different kinds of wedges. Some are oak. I have some Osage orange a fellow from Indiana gave me. I tried those. But I just need a wedge that's harder than what the cedar is. Now I mark from the outside of the tree, from the sapwood. I'll split the heart out of it. When you split the cedar, after the heart is out, you always keep your split in the center, and you can control the split as it goes down. It splits this way easier in the grain than it did the other way when I was using the wedge. Now I just stay in the center all the time. I don't run this froe all the way down because you can see where it makes these marks in the wood here. If you did that all the way down, then it would fracture when you try bending the rib. So you start to split with your blade. And after you've started to split, then you pull it apart by hand. Now it's thinner, I can just use a butcher knife like this. I don't need the leverage of the froe. You just twist the knife in it. You see I keep my feet against it so the end doesn't flop around. Use your knees, sometimes use your whole body. Use everything to split the cedar. The reason we use a heartwood for the ribs is because it's drier and stiffer, and it holds the shape of the canoe better, whereas a sapwood is more flexible, it won't hold the shape as well. When you're splitting like this, at times it feels like you're just pushing the split through when you start at the top here. It's like you're pushing the split right through it. This here would be the thickness of a rib then. I have a shave horse here. And Christy's grandfather used to say that everybody had one of these shave horses. They made handles for their tools and stuff with these. They're just something everybody had when they first homesteaded up here. But it's just a clamp where you step down on the clamp, and then this dumb head comes down against your work, and it holds it so you have both hands free for using your draw knife. We leave the rib wider in the center so it has more strength for holding the shape of the canoe. We taper on the ends so that it will go between the bindings. And there's a rib. Wider in the center, so it has a strength, and a narrow on the end, so it will go between the bindings. Now I'm down to the sapwood here, so this here will all be made into the lining. You have to keep this end from flipping around, otherwise you lose it. You control a split as you go down by how you bend the wood. See the one on my left here, it's this side here, I'm bending harder because it's a little stronger. So you bend the heavy side and it keeps the split going down straight. The reason this lining is in the canoe is because without the lining in the canoe, the bark will shrink between the ribs, and then the canoe looks like a starved horse on the water with all the ribs on the outside, which will be drag and slow the canoe down. So you put this lining in before you put the ribs in. It makes the outside shell stay smoother and makes the canoe faster on the water. The reason we make it as thin as we do is because when we put it in the canoe, it gets lapped over each other like this. And if you had a thicker piece, then the bark going over that, there'd be a hollow underneath between the bark and the lining where that would be too thick. So we split it thinner, that way it keeps it so it's tighter against the bark. It makes a stronger shell on the canoe then. It takes me about 3 hours to get enough cedar split out for the canoe, for the ribs and lining both.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Common Ground. We'll see you next week.
If you have a segment idea for Common Ground pertaining to North Central Minnesota, contact us at legacy@lptv.org or call us at 218-333-3022. If you enjoyed this episode of Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground, consider making a contribution at lptv.org.